On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks are slated to be like the fourth team in the West, according to Vegas. Should they be fourth? No. We'll tell you who they'll bump up ahead of on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
We have Kyrie.
You are Locked On Mavs.
Great, Rusty.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast.
No one's dying.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Amazing.
Your team every day.
And welcome. You are Locked On to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen today. The best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day on any podcast platform. Leave a 5-star review there. Take us with you wherever you go. Like the video on YouTube and comment anything below. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sport stops sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Joining me today, Slightly Biased will be joining me from the great Slightly Biased YouTube channel. We'll talk about the Western Conference. The Mavs, should they be fourth in the West? No, we don't think that they should be. We'll also talk about who's too high, who's too low in the West. They've got this group of the Grizzlies, Suns, Kings, Pelicans. Who's the best out of that group? Who's the worst out of that group? We'll answer all that right now with Slightly. All right, we're here talking about the Mavs over-under win total set at 50.5. We talked about that yesterday with Reggie. And now if you look at the West in general, the Mavs have the fourth best win total over-under in the West. The Thunder have number one at 56.5. Timberwolves number two at 52.5. Nuggets at 51.5. Then the Mavericks at 50.5. Then there's a little bit of a gap there. The Grizzlies and the Suns coming in next at 5-6, however you want to put them, depending on which one you hate more. 47.5 is the next one there. Slightly, should the Mavericks be in fourth? Are the Mavs the fourth best team in the West going into the regular season?
It's important to preface this by saying betting odds are just how Vegas thinks people are going to bet. They're not making claims or anything like that.
However,
I would have them ahead of the Nuggets. I think the Nuggets have enough going against them currently that a team fresh off of an NBA Finals appearance, it should be, the Nuggets are one game ahead according to Vegas on the over-unders, which isn't that egregious or anything like that. But I think the Mavs are better. I would, of course, put the Mavs ahead of the Timberwolves. I think the Thunder are the only team currently that I would confidently say are better than the Dallas Mavericks because they were the 1 seed a season ago. And I thought they really improved in the offseason without sacrificing much in the way of, their roster and their strengths. So I think fourth, I would personally have them second, but I don't think them being a game behind the two teams ahead of them is like that egregious or anything like that.
Yeah, I think the Thunder still number one, right? I just don't think there's any way that you can convince me that they're going to move down. Even if a crazy injury happens to SGA or somebody, I think that they still have added enough to where they won 57 games last year and their over-unders at 56. So I still think they'll hit the over on that one. And I think they'll be the number one team in the West as far as record-wise. And we've seen teams before be the number one team in the West record-wise and not be the best team in the West, right? We've seen the Suns in 2022. We saw that song and dance. We saw the Jazz, way back when we'll play the Mavs.
The Thunder last year.
Yeah, the Thunder last year. Yeah, so even though they're the number one team on this list, it doesn't necessarily make them the number one team in the West necessarily. The Timberwolves is the one that you mentioned. They're set at 52.5. That one is an interesting one. We'll save that. You mentioned the Nuggets. It's Mavs Nuggets is kind of the back and forth one to me. For them to go to 57 to below 51, which means that they dropped 7 wins. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around how they do that. I can see how the Mavericks would jump to 55, 56 wins. But for the Nuggets to drop that far, that's where I'm having a hard time finding those losses.
Well, I guess let me reapproach this. I think the Nuggets are going to hit their over on their win total. I just think the Mavs should maybe be closer to mid 50s on their over under than they are 50.5. The Mavs won 50 games last year in this topsy-turvy season where they didn't even have what ended up being their real team until the trade deadline. Going into this season, they're much better. And I just can't imagine the Mavs at 50 wins, unless there's injuries throughout the course of the season, which is possible, I guess. But I guess I'm more approaching it like that. I'm not saying, the Nuggets 51.5 should be lower. I don't think that. I think that they'll pretty easily go over unless they have some big time injury stuff happen. But I think the Mavericks should be 53, maybe 54. would be what I put, which seems high, but then you think about it, and like I said, they won 50 games a year ago, fresh off of the NBA Finals. The West is strong, the top is getting strong, but it's getting weaker than it was in years past, I think, though.
It's like deep and wide. I don't know if you grew up in church or if you had to sing that song.
Church.
Deep and wide, deep and wide. There's a fountain flowing deep and wide. I feel like that's where the West is right now. Is that it is not as top heavy, like you said. We have the Thunder are going to rack up a ton of wins. The Timberwolves, Mavs, and Nuggets will be up there. Maybe the Grizzlies will bounce back. The Suns should be. The Kings are right there at 46.5. Like they're right there with those two teams. Pelicans still. Lakers, Warriors, Rockets all at 43.5. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But like they're all kind of set there too. It does feel like this is it's just such a deep West. Like, and I think you have to think about that in some of these where you think about, all right, are the Mavs the fourth best team? Are the Nuggets the third or fourth best? Well, not like almost every night you're playing a tough opponent. So if you're missing somebody, the Nuggets, there's the thing that separates the Mavs and the Nuggets this year, I think. The Mavs are more able to deal with some of those injuries that they talked about. We talked about this with Reggie yesterday. I thought he made a really good point towards the end where the Mavs last year, if Kyrie misses a game, that fundamentally changes who you are as a team. You have to play completely differently the next night. Obviously, Luka, same thing. If Lively missed a game before the trades, it fundamentally changed who they were as a team. And now you have Gafford, you have Dinwiddie as a stopgap, you have Klay Thompson as a shooter scorer, you have Najee Marshall and Grimes to step in those wing spots. Like I think the Mavs are more insulated to deal with an injury to one of their stars than the Nuggets. They lose KCP. That's huge. He was third of their team in minutes, played 76 games last year, was part of all their best, lineups. They also lose Reggie Jackson, who was sixth on their team in minutes. I mean, he wasn't the best player, but still played a lot of minutes for them. Who did they replace him with? Russell Westbrook. We'll see how that even goes. And so now, how do they replace minutes? Let's say Murray misses some time, or Jokic misses some time. Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., who has actually been pretty healthy. Like, if they miss any time, it's harder for them to replace than for the Mavericks this year. And I think that's the switch that I think has happened between these two teams.
Yeah, and if we're just talking about the Nuggets here, I mean, it's not the end-all be-all. There's still 2 or 3 months before the NBA season starts, but Jamal Murray was a disaster in the Olympics. And this was coming off of a series against the Timberwolves where, he had a calf injury against the Lakers. His elbow was bothering him against the Timberwolves. And you can't help but wonder after watching him in the Olympics where he's, he looks a step slow to me. He's 6 points a game on 29% from the field, 14% from deep in this during these Olympic games. And they're out. They're done. And he's a big reason why they're out. Well, if he can't play the Lakers, then he's not going to go off against anybody, right? True.
It seems like that's so. Do you take anything? You take any stock from the Olympics? And if a guy plays bad like that?
It depends on, like, if they just don't shoot well, then you could just say, oh, that was a weird 4 or 5 games. But I'll look at Jamal Murray and say he looks a step slow, which is concerning to me because he's dealt with calf injuries and stuff at the end of the season. So that would concern me a little bit. It's more so like if a young guy or somebody is, taking a step forward in an Olympic setting and it's like, oh, okay, whether that's for Team USA or whoever, it's like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Let's see where this can go.
Well, okay. So what if Jamal Murray does take a step back? If Jamal Murray takes a step back, then it's clear. Then it's clear that the Mavs will be better than the Nuggets next year in the regular season. I mean, it's just
they're in some serious trouble. Not saying they'll miss the playoffs or anything, but just in terms of their ceiling, it'll be severely capped.
It's interesting. The top of the West, the Timberwolves are the last team that's kind of up there. What's the scenario where the Mavs are better than the Timberwolves in the regular season next year? What happens for the Mavs? What happens for the Timberwolves?
I mean, Anthony Edwards doesn't take that playmaking leap that I think so many people have expected, and Mike Conley, who's just getting older and older, Father Time does catch up eventually, and he was so important for them a year ago, especially during the regular season. Like, we're talking about regular season win totals here, not like a playoff setting. Where Kyle Anderson was also very important for them throughout the regular season, and he's gone now. They're really the only main thing they did in the offseason was trade up to get Dillingham, but I don't know how much of a role he's going to have immediately, and if he does have to have a big role, because Mike Conley, who was dealing with some injuries from time to time last year, if he gets hurt, that's a rookie, very small guard that you're now putting in a very important position. So, they're still really deep, but a lot of their ceiling is, well, Anthony Edwards is going to do this, and Anthony Edwards is going to do this, and Anthony Edwards is going to do this. But, sometimes it doesn't work out like that. I mean, I'm a big believer in them, but.
Yeah, I think that they had some pretty decent health last year, too. I mean, you had Towns who only played 62 games, but Anthony Edwards played 70, 78. Gobert played 76, so they had some health there. That could turn for them a little bit. They did lose Kyle Anderson, which is, I guess, they end of their rotation guy, but they lost him. It didn't really replace him with a lot. And it's all on Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels to still take that next step. I also think that teams now have a year to look at their defense and to look at how to attack their defense. We also just saw Rudy Gobert get essentially benched in the Olympics. So
true.
He's gonna be 32, 33. And so eventually Father Time will catch up with him too, in a way. So yeah, I think that the Mavs, a lot of things go right for them. The depth ends up being a huge push for them. Maybe they get more Kyrie Irving games this season. The Mavs had a 55 win pace with Kyrie Irving last year for the whole year, not just for the end of it. And then the Mavs who they were the last 3 months of the season, where they really went on a tear, and that defense is actually real in the regular season next year. And so those things could really flip in that way. Coming up, let's talk about the middle of the West. Who could rise and who could fall out of that? We have so many teams that are kind of bunched up. Grizzlies, Suns, Kings, who's the best of that group? Pelicans, Lakers, Warriors, who's the best of that group? We'll tell you coming up.
You don't believe you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Everyone has moments in your life where you're just exhausted. I just had this moment recently where I took a break and I needed to just go and refresh and relax and to think through things and to work through some things in my head. And I used a lot of the tactics that I got from therapy in my rest and relaxation to try and work through some of these things. If you think about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. Fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed professional. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. You got to love that. That'll help you out when your schedule is all crazy like mine is all the time. Think about it. Think about therapy. Never skip a therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. Appreciate each and every one of you for checking out the show, making us your first listen. Make your second listen Locked On NBA. I'll be on there on Thursdays. So check out Locked On NBA. Great stuff. 30 minutes a day. All the NBA stuff that you need. So it's a great compliment to this show. Go listen to Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you're listening, watching this show. All right, Slightly. We've talked about the top of the West. The Mavs slotted in as that fourth team there for, if we're just looking at the win totals over under. So where Vegas thinks that the Mavs should be slotted.
Where does the dog think the Mavs should be slotted?
Dog thinks it's disrespectful. I kind of do. I kind of did yesterday too. I gave my case about that yesterday. He's going nuts downstairs. Must be the mailman. The mailman.
It's the mailman every time. That guy
delivering the takes that I failed before. It's
nice.
Now there's a group right under the Mavs and Nuggets, because Mavs and Nuggets are 51.5, 50.5. Then you have this group right below them of the Grizzlies, the Suns, and the Kings at 47, 47, 46.5. And let's throw the Pelicans in there too, 45.5. This group of four teams. If you had to pick one of those teams to rise up and make it into the top four, or to be the top of that four group, who is it in that group?
It's hard to say the Pelicans right now because I don't know what they're doing at their center position.
They don't either.
They don't either. So it's hard for me to go them. The Suns are interesting because I love what they did with their point guard position out of thin air. I mean, getting Monte Morris and Tyus Jones for minimum contracts is pretty impressive. And then Budenholzer, but you're just really relying on the health of those three guys, really four guys, because Nurkic, they were not very good when Nurkic was on the court. I know I'm not the biggest Nurkic fan, but he was important for what they had going on last year. And he was healthier last year than he usually has been throughout most of his career.
He played 76 games, played 27 minutes a game. And it's not just how good Nurkic is. It's how bad the drop-off was to KD at the 5 or to Eubanks or...
Yeah, Eubanks was terrible.
Bol. I think those are their only...
Well, they got Plum Dog Millionaire now, so that should be...
So there you go.
An upgrade, but you never know, really. Kings at 46.5, that feels like they're That feels about right to me. The answer is clearly the Grizzlies. Like they have the highest ceiling, I think. I mean, the last 2 years we saw a healthy John Morant, they were the 2 seed and the 3 seed respectively. So yeah, I think it's them.
To me, okay, they were the 2 seed, the 3 seed, winning 50 games, barely 50 games. I mean, it was one of those Wests, but I think they'll have an adjustment to try and get back. To me, it's the Suns. Like to get Tyus Jones out of nothing, like you said. Now they have their 3 stars: Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal. You've got Tyus Jones, Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, like you said, Plumlee, Nurkic. They have a decent group of role players around them now, I think, and they just didn't that point guard they needed last year to just set the table, to set up Beal, to set up Booker, to not have Booker running point all the time, Beal running point all the time. It just felt like they were disorganized at times, even though their offense was still like better than their defense. They were like top 10 in offense last year. Yeah. With those 3 guys, they should be better than top 10. I think they were 9th or whatever. But to me, I think it's clearly that Suns team. What takes the Grizzlies higher than the Suns?
I just think they're a better roster. I think that they have the Suns have the more top end talent, but John Morant's like a first team, second team All NBA level player.
Said anything after that?
Yeah. Or saying on the court, first team, second team, first NBA, first team all whatever,
all NBA decision maker.
Yeah, he would not be on that list, unfortunately. He would be omitted. But the defensively, Jaren Jackson Jr. won the Defensive Player of the Year a couple years ago. Like that was only 2 seasons ago. Desmond Bane really sort of took this leap, and then like Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams Jr., all these young guys, they got a chance to really sort of grow and develop their game last year and this season from hell from them. I guess the one concern would be Zach Edey as their center. Like they have Brandon Clark too, but like they're really relying on Zach Edey, which would scare me a little bit because he's a rookie and 7.
Are they relying on him the same way the Mavs did last year with Lively? Like, are they going to play him like a 15-minute a game role? Still be able to play Jaren Jackson at 5.
But see, like the Steven Adams was so important for them. That's why I'm thinking they play Edey a lot, is because they know when we have this screening center who can roll to the rim and stuff and rebound, like that's when we're at our best, because Jaren Jackson Jr. can't do those things really. So
they should do
what?
They should get Jonas Valanciunas back.
Yeah, that I thought that was. I thought, and why I think that they're relying on Edey is they were tied to all these free agent centers at points before the free agency started, and they didn't do anything really. So all these teams have their flaws. That's why they're all here. That's why they're in this group.
Yeah, send Conchar. He's making like $6 million. Send him and like I don't know, Derrick Rose's contract or somebody. Like send them. Boom. You get Jonas Valanciunas. Couple seconds.
Well, I saw a report that the Wizards are going to try and trade Valanciunas the day he's eligible to be traded.
I know. That's why I brought him up, because they signed him to a free agent, so he'll be available, like December 15th or something like that?
Something like that. But they always say that. It never happens.
Then they'll trade him?
This always happens where it's like, oh, this free agent, December 15th, look out. And then everyone's like, here it comes. And then people will come in my chat and they'll be like, you excited for tomorrow? And I'm like, what? It'll be December 14th. I'm like, what's tomorrow? And they're like, blah, 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 can be traded. And I'm like, okay.
I do believe the Wizards, though.
No, I mean, he'll be traded, but I don't know if it'll be December 15th. Pack your bags.
Yeah,
buddy.
right. But I think that could be an option for the Grizzlies. Like that one makes sense.
Yeah.
Are we too low on the DeMar DeRozan addition to the Kings? Like they're kind of the same team. They added DeMar DeRozan instead of Harrison Barnes. Like we've seen the Harrison Barnes experiment.
So they're just saying, you know what, we're gonna be terrible defensively. That's fine.
Correct.
We're gonna suck on defense. The floor spacing, it's a problem to me because you have Sabonis who's not going to shoot, DeMar who's not going to shoot. Okay, Fox who was much better from 3 last year. I still think teams are like, all right, De'Aaron Fox is shooting at 3. We're okay with that rather than him driving or attacking. So I don't know. I mean, this just feels. What was it for the Kings? 46.5? Yeah, that feels about right. I would be surprised if they creeped over the 50-win mark. I'm very surprised. They would be the team I picked last out of this group.
Yeah, is there? Yeah, after the Pelicans.
Well, I think the Pelicans' ceiling is higher because if they figure out an Ingram trade, like Ayton is in.
I feel worse about them. I feel worse about them.
I mean,
you did not convince
me right now. What was the trade I saw? Oh my God, there was one where I was like, okay, that makes sense salary wise, but it just slipped my mind. Oh, it was to the Jazz, and it was Kessler on the Pelicans. That's interesting.
Tomorrow on the show, you and I are going to do, we'll pick our guaranteed overs and guaranteed unders, and we will talk about the Pelicans.
Okay, all right. I feel like I know where that's going.
All right, coming up, let's talk about, I want to talk about Lauri Markkanen, actually. Let's talk about Lauri Markkanen, and seems like he's going to sign with the Jazz. He can't be traded. Does that change anything with the Mavericks or with the Western Conference next season? Let's talk about that coming up.
You don't believe you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode is brought to you by the reason why we're doing this episode. It's FanDuel. FanDuel has all kinds of props and odds and things that you can use to get in on the action. They've got these over-unders. We've been talking all about them, where you go and you can pick, all right, the Mavs 50.5. If you think that's disrespectful, like I do, pick the over. Put some money down on it. See what happens. FanDuel.com, they have all kinds of boosts and bonuses daily, all kinds of stuff like that. As the Olympics still go on, they've still got the Olympics as well. Basketball, let's see, we've got USA is a 16.5 point favorite against Jokic and Serbia. I think I would take that. France is 4.5 point underdog against Germany. So if there are German listeners out there that are still hanging on from the Dirk era, or that are just big Maxey stands, like, go ahead and you can grab Germany right there. Or if you are a Maxey stan that hates Dennis Schroeder because of the comments, go ahead and take the France 4.5 points. So you can go check out that. Again, it's all FanDuel.com. Go check it out at FanDuel.com.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
All right, Slightly, we've been talking about the over-unders. We'll talk about some more tomorrow. We'll bring up the absolute unders, the absolute overs that we're going to take. And but I want to talk about Lauri Markkanen because that story just came across my desk today. That came across my desk yesterday. There was all these Jazz reporters saying he's not going to sign. There's no way he's going to sign. Jake Fisher, I think, even reported there's no way he's going to sign, or sources are saying he's not going to sign. Then all of a sudden, a report today comes in that he is going to sign and he's not going to be eligible to be traded all season next year. What do you take? First of all, what do you make of this whole Jazz situation? Is it just leverage on both sides? That's what it feels like to me.
Well, I saw reports that said Markkanen wants to stay in Utah, and this just kind of feels like that's what it is. Like sometimes the players will say, I want to stay here. And we know, there's a reason why a certain Dallas Maverick was booed so heavily in the NBA Finals this past year. Sometimes players don't follow through with things that they say about staying with teams. But
that's it. It's me versus the machines.
Oh, God. Is that the Celtics who nicknamed the Machines?
Yeah,
the Machines.
It's not emotional. I'm not worried about your resources.
Oh God, I don't know if you saw the Twitter account that keeps up with who NBA players are following. The Celtics had a very interesting day. They had a very interesting day on Twitter.
All right,
but
right. Yeah.
What were we talking about? I honestly. No.
Welcome to August, Slightly.
I know. God, 2-3 more months of this. Markkanen, obviously, it's nice because the teams in my brain that would line up the trade for Markkanen, the three ones that make the most sense to me are all Western Conference teams. So him going to the Thunder terrified me, and it just sounded like they never were really interested. And then once I heard Thunder people explain it, where they're going to have to pay all of these guys, huge amounts of money. And then if you trade for Markkanen, you're paying him the max. Like he's going to demand that. So that just makes their cap situation so difficult that I guess that kind of makes some sense to me. Although I thought that move would definitely push them over the edge. But then the Spurs, the Warriors, I'm sure there's other Western Conference teams, like even the Grizzlies maybe, who would sneak in there and kind of throw their hat into the ring. So it's good for the Mavericks in the sense that he's off the table of getting traded to one of these teams mid-season.
Yeah, it probably swings like 7 wins from the Jazz to another team, right?
Yeah.
Like, or it could, because the Jazz would just bottom out. I mean, they would just bottom out without him. It's very hard to imagine even competitive in any game Utah Jazz team without Lauri Markkanen, basically.
So you think if the Warriors trade went through, that would bump them up to 50 because they're at 43?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So that would
won
put
46 last year. That'd get them to 41 or 51, 52. Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the Jazz won 31 last year, but I think some of that is inflated because of some trades, and so
absolutely they would bottom out. It would be terrible. They'd be the worst team in the league.
Yeah, I think keeping him away from another team, I think it is positive. Him not being able to be traded for the whole season, it does make the Jazz a little bit more competitive, which I think affects the Mavericks, but not like not like in a huge way where you're worried about it.
Here, I'll throw this out there because I'm sure people are thinking it. If the longer that this gets pushed back, what I think is the inevitable Lauri Markkanen trade. I've seen Jazz fans really dig their heels that they're not going to trade him. I think it is somewhat inevitable because he is good enough that he almost kind of makes it really hard to bottom out. And the Jazz, I think, probably need the more top end talent because I think Markkanen peaked passable number 2 to a really great number 3.
Yeah, he's also 27. Like it's not like he's a 23, 24-year-old where you see your 5-year plan play out with him.
Right. I saw who was it? Was it Tony Jones today? Who I like a lot. I follow him. I like his stuff. He said that Markkanen is a few. I'm paraphrasing here, but it was basically Markkanen is a few on-ball improvements away from being like a Dirk. And I'm like, well, you're really stretching it a little
Tony,
bit.
Listen, I take back every good thing I just said about Tony Jones.
No, like I said, I love Tony Jones. I was like, all right, we're really pushing it. And I love Lauri Markkanen. I think I'm higher on him than a lot of people, which is why I'm happy that this is happening because I see how him getting traded could swing things.
He also hasn't played more than 66 games in a season since 2017.
See, like when you're on a bad team, I sort of disregard some of that stuff.
I know, but even like 10 more games last year, he played 65 games because he played 55 last year. I mean,
but what I was getting to is the longer that this gets delayed to trading, the more the Mavericks sort of get some picks available to them, and then maybe they can throw their hat into the ring, maybe get in there. They just don't. The problem with the Mavs, they don't have like I guess Brandon Podziemski, who I don't know if he's really this valuable across the league
valuable
or what.
young player in the league.
Yeah, I don't know how true this stuff is, but they just don't really have that. I mean, they have Lively, but they're not trading him. They shouldn't trade him for Markkanen.
Did you want them to draft Markkanen back in it was the Dennis Smith Jr. draft? They couldn't have when they got to him, but
no, I can't say I remember much from that draft, to be honest with you. I was in college at the time, so that just speaks for itself. But I remember I was very happy they got Dennis Smith Jr.
You're not breaking the allegations of the Slightly Biased brand that is like the ethos.
I will say
I don't remember anything about that draft. I have no memory of that draft.
The next draft was the Luka draft was my last year. I was working for the paper at Texas Tech, and I was so pro Luka. And I remember being on Twitter, on my personal Twitter account at the time, getting in arguments with Ben Rogers because Mo Bamba. I was like, I watched this guy in person several times covering the Tech basketball team. He sucks. God bless him.
God bless Ben Rogers or Mo Bamba?
Both. I love them both. Well, I don't really care for Mo Bamba that much, but I love Ben Rogers.
Yeah, the Lauri Markkanen thing. I think at one point during that, we did so much stuff on that draft because it was just such a terrible Mavs season. We were doing daily. Isaac and I were on the show, and I think at one point I was like, "Just do it, just do it." He'll play with Dirk. It'll be cool. Like we'll get to see them both do. Like they'll probably both take a step back at some point together. just do it.
I don't think people, if you were young and you don't really remember the end of the Dirk era, it is sad how almost every move we made, the fan base was just like, just make Dirk happy. Just do something that would be cool for Dirk's final years. Like,
well, they kept like reporting those stories. Like Dirk Nowitzki gave up $100 million in his career. We all felt bad for him.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, Dirk Nowitzki with this front office, how many titles does he win?
Oh wow. The front office, the old regime, they had their moments. Like they built really good teams, especially in the mid 2000s and then 2011. I'll always say, because Dirk's my GOAT, so I'll never argue when someone's like, that's the greatest title run ever. Like he didn't have this, he didn't have that. That team was incredible. Like it was just a really well built roster. That's like very modern in a lot of ways, how it was built.
Yeah, they can play now.
Yeah, very modern. But yeah, after that, it was complete and total disaster. Like, does Dirk maybe get one more ring in the back half of his career with this front office?
I think he would have got one more in the front half.
In the front half? Maybe, but the front office can only do so much. They made the finals. They were the 1 seed and, lost in round 1. Like, It's not like they were losing in the first round every year.
It's true. It's true. Wow, defending Donnie Nelson and the front and Mark Cuban in the Mavs front office here. Wow.
Well, I'm the after 2011, it was not defensible whatsoever.
But like, I feel like the Warriors are in that stage right now where it's like, okay, the moves that they make, how like they're out of it. Like it just feels like they're out of it. They're on the other side of their bell curve.
Yeah, I mean, we say the Lauri thing, and it is kind of reminiscent of the old Dirk days where it's like, yeah, this would be nice. It would make us more competitive, but like we're not winning a championship more than likely.
Yeah.
And then you just sell away your future for this one move. Is it really worth it? Warriors fans would say yes, that they're championship contenders with that trade. I don't think that they are.
Was it worth it?
I think they're done.
Tomorrow we'll do the over-unders on the rest of the NBA. So we'll have 2 guaranteed over, 2 guaranteed unders. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Well, sorry, Kessler Edwards. We won't.
I was about to say on today's show, Kessler Edwards.
No. Sorry, bud. We'll talk about that tomorrow with Slightly. Guys, thanks for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.